And I hope you don't mind me being redundant. Okay, I'm just going to repeat myself.
No.
So when I repeat myself, I'm trying to be a teacher. Okay? Because that's how the brain works, right? Mm-hmm. You shove things into long-term memory by repeating. So, epithelia is one of the classifications of tissue. Epithelia has several subclassifications, okay, which makes your life confusing. Okay, epithelia is always on the surface of something or on the innermost portion of something else. Okay, that's epithelia. So the outer surface of your body is epithelia. The inner surface of your digestive tract is epithelia. The lining of your arteries and veins is epithelia. The lining of your cavities is epithelia. The lining on the surface of all of your organs is epithelia. All of your glands, every gland in your body, is derived from epithelia. So that's epithelia. And because epithelia, dependent upon where it's at, it's doing something different. The similarities are tight junctions, holding these cells together, keeping what's in and what's out. That's the nature of epithelia, no matter where you find it, and no matter what shape it assumes. Okay? Epithelia. So, you have these different varieties of epithelia. Squamous, cuboidal, columnar, pseudo-stratified columnar, so add pseudo-stratified columnar underneath this. And then you have transitional epithelium. You also have stratified squamous. If I were to arrange this, I would put this right after squamous, because you want the squamous together, followed by cuboidal, followed by columnar, followed by pseudo-stratified columnar. Okay? And then followed by transitional, and then I would come back and do stratified cuboidal and stratified columnar, which are really, really rare. Okay? You only find, when you think of the term, when you use the term cuboidal, that is always in a duct. What's a duct? It's not those birds that consume and fly. Okay? Okay, and they eat your grass and they poop all over the lawn. Okay? It's not them. Okay? That's not a duct, the kind of duct we're talking about. The duct we're talking about is a conduit for transport of stuff from the inside to the outside. Okay? So when we say transport from the inside to the outside, we also use a fancy word that describes transport of stuff from the inside to the outside. We call that exocrine. Okay, we're secreting stuff to the outside. So exocrine is like sweat, saliva, tears. Your pancreas secretes digestive enzymes into your duodenum, so that's exocrine too. This is all glandular. Your breasts, okay, secrete milk to the outside. That's exocrine. Okay? Anything, and all of those exocrine glands are using a duct to transport that medium to the outside. So anytime you're thinking about cuboidal, you're thinking a duct. Okay? And then these other two, stratified cuboidal and stratified columnar, those are just really big ducts. Because that's the only place you're going to find these. Stratified columnar and stratified cuboidal. They're usually in really, really big sweat ducts. Okay, usually. Some kind of sweat duct. Okay. So simple squamous, you're going to find coating the surface of your organs and coating the surface of your cavities, your thoracic cavity, your abdominal cavity, and your peritoneal cavity. Okay, that's simple squamous. Simple squamous is also lining the inside of arteries and veins. And when they're inside of arteries and veins, we call them endothelia, not epithelia. Endo, like endo, inside. Okay? But they're still simple squamous epithelia. And capillaries are one endothelia cell thick. Okay? And all capillaries are filtering systems. They filter. Because you've got to make the interstitial fluid, right? So where's the interstitial fluid coming from? It's a filtrated blood plasma. The little things and the dissolved things, but not the big things like red blood cells that stays in the capillary. Okay? Make sense? Okay, so simple squamous. Now it says Bowman's capsule. That's just we'll talk about that in a little while. And another place would be your lungs. The alveoli are one alveolar cell thick. An alveoli is just a sac that is one simple squamous epithelial cell thick. Okay? That's for exchange of gases. So you have all these little microscopic sacs made up of simple squamous epithelia. And we already talked about simple cuboidal. Simple columnar. Now, simple columnar is in your digestive tracts, from your stomach all the way to your anus. And these simple columnar, they have microvilli on them, like we discussed earlier. These microvilli are there to increase the surface area for absorption. And since it's in your gut, so this would be the lumen right here, and stuff is absorbed in this direction. So here's the basement membrane, and then the connective tissue underneath. And in here, this area down here would be your interstitium. Okay, so from your interstitium, it's going to go into the local capillaries. Actually, yeah, it will. So this has microvilli, and then, but here it just looks like a brush border, and even in this cartoon. Okay, yeah. So anything in your digestive tract is going to be simple columnar. And then you have pseudo-stratified. Pseudo-stratified columnar. That's in your respiratory tract. So if columnar looks like this, and you're pulling in stuff from the lumen is the hole or the cavity of your digestive tract. The transport of this stuff in this direction is going to push the nucleus to the bottom. And all the nuclei are down at the bottom. So it's simple columnar. And they're really like columns of cells. Okay. Pseudo-stratified columnar looks like this. Now the nuclei in this cell would be there, here, and here. Okay? And maybe in another cell next to it would be here. So the nuclei are in different levels within the cell. So it looks like, because of the different positions of the nuclei, it looks like these cells are stratified, but they're not. They're columnar. So we call them pseudo-stratified columnar, kind of like they're stratified, but they're not. That's what pseudo means. Okay? Okay? So that's really what they look like. And in your respiratory tract, there's cilia on them. Okay? And these cilia are moving. If you were able to shrink down and look at them at the cellular level, it would be like watching a wheat field in the wind. You'd see waves of the wheat bending together in a synchronized way. That's because these epithelia are tied together with gap junctions, which are electrical synapses that allow the cilia to work together instead of haphazardly. Remember gap junctions, electrical synapses? Okay? And we'll talk about gap junctions, how they work a little bit later. Okay? That'll be next time. Now then we'll start the process. Okay. Magic. Okay. So that's pseudostratified columnar epithelia. And in columnar epithelia as well as pseudostratified columnar epithelia, you have these cells that make a mucus. And we call those goblet cells. Okay. So they're serving a purpose too that we'll talk about later. Okay. So we'll talk about it now. So in your respiratory tract, goblet is making the mucus. Every time you go cough, and you naturally swallow, right? Because you're a goober swallower. You're swallowing that mucus you're generating in your respiratory tract, and the cilia are pushing it up so it comes to the top and you stimulates the cough reflex, and the reflex after you swallow all the goobers, and the goobers are attaching all the particulate matter that's in your respiratory tract, sticking it there, and makes it what we call in Hispanic slang mocos. So you're a mocos swallower too. Can't help yourself. You don't think about it. Unless you're one of those guys walking down the street and you spit it out and the rest of us, right?
Same sound effect.
You've been there, done that, right? Some people do that, okay? It's nasty. So the acid in your stomach will kill any of those microorganisms that are stuck to it. That's why one of the reasons why we have the acid in the stomach. It's just one of the reasons. Most of the reason is digestion, but it's a barrier. So that's the goblet cells in your respiratory tract. Then we have goblet cells in your digestive tract, and they're there to make a mucus to keep these cells from digesting themselves. Because the digestion is taking place in the lumen of your stomach and in your small intestine, and you don't want to digest your own cells, okay? So you make this mucus to protect the cells. Okay, what else? Okay, stratified squamous, that's in your mouth, in your esophagus, and in your vagina if you have one. Okay? We already talked about that. We don't do that again. Okay? Okay, so, and when you look at stratified squamous, there's really two types. Non-keratinized stratified squamous and keratinized stratified squamous. Non-keratinized stratified squamous is in your mouth, your esophagus, and your uterus. Stratified, keratinized stratified squamous is on the outside, that's your skin. And transitional epithelia, that's in your bladder. You never see it. Now, transitional epithelia exists in two ways. It looks like stratified cuboidal, but it's not. It's transitional. Or it looks like stratified squamous, but it's not. It's transitional. And you'll never see it in the stratified squamous conformation because the tissues that we make are really, really thin, and if we stretch it, we tear it. So you can't see it in the squamous. And that's the only time transitional epithelia becomes squamous is because you're stretching it. And when you're stretching it, you know you need to go. Because that's where it's at. It's in your bladder, in your ureter, and your urethra. So when it's stretched, it's instigated a spinal cord reflex that says, oh, I need to go, and that's where you go, right? Have you ever seen a little boy do this? He's trying to hold on to it, right? And if he stopped doing that, it's coming out. Okay, they wet their pants. That's a neurological mechanism. We might talk about it if I remember. So here's some simple squamous looking down, flat, higher power, who cares? Here's what we want to see, because this is the way we're going to see it. This is the digestive tract, this is the lumen out here. Here's 2 layers of smooth muscle. And then the stratified, the simple squamous is lining the surface of this digestive tract. Okay, here it is in a higher and higher power. So here is the nuclei of the stratified squamous. And we call this viscera pleura. Viscera means organs, pleura means this simple squamous epithelia. Okay? So if it was parietal pleura, it would be the lining of your thoracic cavity, for instance. Okay? As opposed to visceral pleura. So here is your kidneys, and I guess in your A&P textbook it just says kidneys, but it doesn't really say what they are. Okay, so earlier on we said Bowman's capsule is made up of simple squamous epithelia. So if we can see, so here's a capsule right here. This capsule right here is surrounding some glomeruli. So all this stuff right here is glomeruli. And the glomeruli is a fancy word that describes a filtering capillary bed in the kidneys. So remember, capillaries are one endothelial cell thick. So they're simple squamous. So there's simple squamous epithelia in here. And when we look at this under higher power, here's a capillary, okay? And you can see the nuclei of the capillary. Here's one, here's one, here's one. Because this nuclei is cut longitudinally. And all this red gunk in there are red blood cells. Okay, now Bowman's capsule, getting back to that, this is the capsule that surrounds the glomerulus, okay? And if we look at it closely, we can see a nuclei, maybe another nuclei, another nuclei, another nuclei that's forming the capsule around the glomerulus. Okay? So we have kind of like a space between the glomerulus and the capsule where the filtrate is being formed in the kidneys. So then the filtrate is transported in these. Okay? These are two different ducts. Here's a duct and here's a duct. Notice they look slightly different. That's because they're in different locations of the tubular system of the kidneys. We'll talk more about that later. Okay? So these are two different ducts. And ducts are made up of what kind of epithelia? Cuboidal. Yeah, you think ducts, you think cuboidal. Okay. So here it is under higher power, and now you can start to see the nuclei and the red blood cells in the capillary. And you can see at least one nuclei involved in the capsule. And here's some more. Okay? And then you can see these ducts are cuboidal epithelia, made up of cuboidal epithelia. Okay, here's your lungs. Your lungs are simple squamous epithelia. They're alveoli, they're sacs. Now keep in mind, these are two-dimensional images, so you have to visualize them three-dimensionally, because that's really what's happening, right? A ball. So if I had a tennis ball and I cut a thin slice out of it, what would I have? A circle. God, it's really hard to get anything out of her. So you have a circle. So these aren't perfect circles, but here's one, here's one, here's one, here's one, here's one. These are all little tiny balls called alveoli, made up of one thin layer of simple squamous epithelia. Okay, so here are some veins or arteries with endothelial cells. Okay? All the other stuff inside are red blood cells. Here is non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelia. Non-keratinized. Here is a vein down here. Veins are always this irregular shape. Arteries are always circular or oval. Okay? Because veins kind of like collapse because there's very little pressure. In arteries, they have a lot of pressure and a lot of smooth muscle. We'll talk about that later, so it gives them this oval appearance. So you should be able to recognize an artery or a vein on any slide. High power of non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelia. Here's keratinized stratified squamous epithelia. So here's the stratification, and then this area right here would be the keratin. And this is really a fingerprint. And if you notice the ducts are going through there, and it's like, so if it's corkscrewing through the tissue, okay? And if you take a thin section of a corkscrew, you get circles on it. Staircase circles, like you see. Make sense?
What part is creating the keratin?
The cells that are dying. The keratin are cytoskeletal elements that hold cells together by tight junctions and desmosomes. So these cells right here, as they're growing outward, they start to die. And then you get this dead layer of cells. And we call that dead layer of cells keratin. Okay? So here's the same thing. Higher power. So here's keratinized stratified squamous epithelia, but this is on the palm of your hand or the bottom of your foot, and this is like on your forearm where there's no hair growing, because there's no hair follicles there. And the keratin there on that part of you is really thin. And you can see it at low power and high power, and you can see some melanin, the brown pigment in those cells. So this person has a slight tan. So what's all this stuff down here? It's a form of connective tissue that we'll talk about later. So again, this is comparing the two different keratinized stratified squamous epitheliums on high power. Okay, that's all this is. Okay, simple cuboidal epithelia. As I told you before, when you think simple cuboidal epithelia, you think ducts, except in this case we're not. This is the only case. Otherwise it's ducts. And this is in the thymus. Okay? And remember when you cut that tennis ball up and you became a... Oh, did you? How painful was that? Okay. Circle. Okay, it was kind of hard to get out. You gotta, you know. Okay, so yeah, you're forming circles here too. Okay, so these are called follicles. A follicle is a ball that got sliced right down the middle, and you got some circles. And only in the thyroid will you have simple cuboidal epithelia forming these follicles. Otherwise, when you think simple cuboidal, you think of ducts. So here's some salivary tissue, and all these are ducts. See, these ducts like twist and turn through the tissue, so all three of these holes are probably one duct going through the tissue and getting sliced in different places. So when they're all collected like this, that's all one duct going in and out of the plane of the section, because these are really, really thin slices of tissue. Okay? And we'll talk about the other tissue out here a little later. That's the tissue that's making saliva. Higher power, the same thing. Higher, more of the same. Don't confuse a duct with an artery. Okay? Same stuff. Okay, we're coming back to a lot of this. So here is a hair follicle right here. Okay? And these are sebaceous glands. They're made up of ducts, or the ducts of sebaceous glands. And that causes the secretion associated with the hair follicle. And because these cells in sebaceous glands, the whole cell just blows up. That's why your hair gets oily if you don't wash it. Because if it's a whole cell blowing up, that's the plasma membrane, which is an oil, gets put on your hair or your skin if you don't take a shower. And there's a lot of nutrients in there, so that the bacteria on your skin starts digesting the nutrients, and you smell like a dead horse after a while, right? If you don't take a shower. Okay. Okay. So here is the ovary, and this is a follicle maturing, okay? So we're going to ignore this, and these are some little tiny follicular cells. Here's another one, and they're in different stages of development, from here to here, and then eventually to here. So we're going to ignore those for now, because really all we want to do is talk about the pleura, the viscera pleura. It's an organ, so it's viscera. In this organ, it's the only organ in your body that has simple cuboidal epithelia in place of simple squamous. So another place where you forget the ducts. Okay? Two places now. Otherwise, ducts are simple cuboidal epithelia, and here's the only other place besides the thyroid where you're going to have simple cuboidal epithelia, And in this one, it's the Visceral Pleura is simple cuboidal, where everywhere else on your organs it's simple squamous. Okay, higher powered, same thing. Those primordial follicles really look pretty. This right here is an undeveloped egg. Okay? And so are the surrounding cells. Okay, more of the same thing. Move on. Different slides, different technician, different stage. So here is simple columnar epithelia. Okay? Here are the goblet cells. Here is the brush border. Okay? So this area right here is the lumen. So let's draw a picture of the digestive tract. So the digestive tract is a big tube, right? Right? So this is a cross section of the tube going like this, right? Okay, so in the tube you have these folds, okay? And lining the folds all the way around them are simple columnar epithelia. Right? And the brush border would be here. This would be the lumen, the tube inside the tube. Okay? And these right here would be macrovilli, or the folds. Okay? And if we put some of these folds really close together, you'll see like a slit in between. That's what this is. That slit in between two of the folds. Okay? Which means the slit is part of the lumen, the outside. Okay? If we cut a section like this, we'd see something a little different. We'd see this architecture. If we cut it like this, in that direction, we'd see this architecture on a slide. Make sense? Okay? So this little hole in the middle right there is this right here. The lumen. Okay? Here's the brush border. So this right here, this big thing right here would be one of the folds. Here is a goblet cell, and all these cells along this area are simple cuboidal epithelia. Simple cuboidal epithelia. Simple cuboidal epithelia. Okay? And this area in between right here is called the interstitium. No, it's called the lamina propria. Okay, which is where stuff is absorbed in that direction, dumped into the capillaries, and then are put into your vasculature eventually. Okay, so these folds increase the surface area for absorption, and the microvilli on individual cells increase the surface area for absorption. So you have two ways to increase the surface area. Okay? So this is your digestive tract. This is somebody's epididymis. Simple columnar epithelia. I think this is a grasshopper's epididymis. The epididymis is a conduit for moving sperm from your gonads to the outside. So all these little things in here, those are sperm. Higher power are the little spermy guys. You know, the little things that get you into trouble. So stay away from them. Okay, and you leave them where they're at if you go. You don't want to get in trouble. Okay. So here is an image of the oviduct. Okay, is there another image? Here it is. See, this is this. It has the same basic architecture as the digestive tract. You have these folds. Okay, and here it is. You can see cilia on the folds. So these are ciliated epithelia. Okay, here it is under higher power. You can see the cilia, and they're simple columnar epithelia. However, they never look simple columnar to me. But they call them simple columnar epithelia, so I have to stay with that. They don't look like simple columnar to me. Okay, so the nuclei are at different levels.
So do they look pseudo?
They look like ciliated pseudo-stratified columnar epithelia, but they're categorized. I didn't get to name them. If I would have named them, I would have said, this is ciliated simple columnar. I would
The
have.
testes are pseudo-stratified too, right?
We'll deal with the testes later. Okay?
Well, I mean, it makes sense, you know.
Yeah. And then it even make more sense when we get to reproductive physiology. Okay, so yeah. And here it is under lower power. Okay, so, and then here's higher power. See, these right here are part of your testes. The epididymis. We'll deal with that later. Okay, so here is your respiratory tract. Now the nuclei are at different levels like I described earlier, and they're cilia. So they're ciliated pseudo-stratified columnar epithelia. This is in your trachea and your bronchi. And higher power, the same thing. See, now you can see that there are little tiny strands in there, right? But if this was microvilli, it would just look like a brush border or a solid color. No, you wouldn't see the strands. Okay, so now we're getting into a sweat gland, and the ducts start out, and they undergo change right here, and especially over here. Okay, and they're changing from simple cuboidal to stratified cuboidal to stratified squamous. No, I'm sorry, let me say this again. Simple cuboidal to stratified columnar. That's big ducts. So you only see this in big ducts, and it's rare. You don't always see this. But here, here it is. Okay, so here's the duct. Now they're starting to layer right here. So you're saying those are stratified cuboidal. And when they get out about here, now you're calling them stratified columnar, which doesn't look like stratified columnar to me. It looks like a cuboidal with a columnar cell on top of it. But I didn't get to name these either. Okay, here it is under higher power. So simple cuboidal, stratified columnar. It's all the same darn duct. These are all the same duct leading to the outside. They're just weaving in and out of the plane section. Okay, same thing, stratified cuboidal. Okay, so this is on the surface of your tongue. On your tongue is stratified squamous. But these are what we call papillae, and the taste buds are right here. We'll deal with that later. This is skeletal muscle down here because your tongue moves like that, right? On purpose. Okay? Can you fold your tongue? Mm-hmm. All right, the other way. Okay, like me.
Yeah.
Some people can fold them the other way.
Wing.
Huh?
Wing.
No, I thought it was way more the other way. No. Yeah, that's up. Some people can fold them down. No, I haven't seen one yet.
Some people can't fold.
Huh?
Some people can't fold.
I wouldn't know about that. But your tongue has muscles that are moving in all different directions. Skeletal muscle. We'll deal with that later. So look, this is a duct. So it's here's glandular epithelia. So it's secreting into here. So your tongue salivates. Same stuff. They're ducts. Okay. These are sebaceous glands, I believe. Yeah, sebaceous glands. They're associated with hair follicles. And here is some more glandular epithelia. Okay. We'll deal with some more of this later. Here is transitional epithelia. So this is ureter. When you see transitional epithelia, where you see it, if you see it in your ureter, your urethra, or your bladder, at this magnification, you can't tell which organ you're in because it all looks the same. Okay. Here is an artery. And here's some smaller arteries. Okay. Here is transitional epithelia in a horse. It looks the same as anywhere else. So if you stretch it, this looks like stratified cuboidal, but it's not. If you stretch it, it looks like stratified squamous. Okay. Here's transitional epithelia in the human bladder, I believe. More transitional epithelia. No matter where you look, it looks the same.